What's going on, everybody? Welcome into episode 36 of the MudWatch Sports Podcast on this Monday, December 30th, 2024. I'm your host, Zach Malamud. Before we get started, please subscribe below. Follow all of my social accounts. Let's kick things off today in the NFL. It was a great day for the New York Giants yesterday, sort of, as they finally got a win, but that doesn't really help the Giants. The Giants now sit with the 4th overall pick in the NFL draft in 2025, and Giants fans just continue to not be able to catch a break here as they sit at 3-13 at the bottom of the NFL, but they're tied with 3 other teams at 3-13, and based on tiebreaker, strength of schedule, the whole deal, the Giants sit at number 4, and you're thinking, well, last week, 2-13, just lose the last couple of games. You're sitting with the 1st overall pick as Vegas won, and then all of a sudden, that's all in the garbage now, and New England has the number 1 pick, followed by Tennessee and Cleveland, and you look at the Giants and say, well, they need a quarterback. They need a quarterback. There's one position that they need more than anything, and that's at quarterback, even though Drew Lock had a crazy performance yesterday. But then you look at New England, you say, man, maybe they don't need a quarterback. And obviously Drake May from last year, they're looking probably trade down. I would say New England is and see what they could get for number 1 overall. Could that be an avenue for the Giants? But they're not getting ahead of Tennessee or Cleveland in terms of a quarterback right now. Tennessee, obviously, they have Will Levis, and I think they're going to probably move on from him at the end of the season. And Cleveland's problems with Deshaun Watson right now, they're probably going to look for that second quarterback if they're sitting at 3rd overall. So a really, really sad day in the end for Giant fans who just continue to go through it this year. And some Giant fans said, all right, well, a win's a win, and we like the fight from the team, and the offense looked really good, and they put up 45 points for the first time in who knows how long, but they lost out on the number 1 pick, most likely because they won against Indianapolis. So let's talk about the game. 45-33, the Giants get a win on their home field and knock Indy out of playoff contention in the AFC, and I think in the end, you look at the defense and say, well, they didn't have the greatest game. And this one was just all on the offense. And the offense really just carried the load here. Drew Lock with a career performance here. 17 of 23, 309 passing yards, 4 passing touchdowns, along with a rushing touchdown. What a performance by Drew Lock in a big game for him to really still prove that he's still got it and still can be a productive and solid quarterback in the NFL. But Malik Neighbors was also a big part of it. 7 receptions, 171 receiving yards, along with 2 touchdowns. What a performance by the Giants rookie, and he's pretty good at football. I think that's probably the consolation prize in the end, you would say, for the Giants. So what a performance by Neighbors. What a performance by Drew Lock. And Neighbors, actually the first Giants rookie ever, 100 catches as well as 1,000 receiving yards in a season. I think that really speaks for itself, the numbers there. And a guy that's only played 14 games as well. He's missed 2 games and still has those numbers. And obviously near the top of the list in terms of rookies and receptions on the season. Brock Bowers broke that record, broke Puka Nakua's record from last year. Brock Bowers broke that one yesterday. He's at 108. Malik Neighbors with 2 less games at 104. That is ridiculous numbers by Malik Neighbors and ridiculous efficiency as well based on the quarterback situation. And like I said, 2 less games played by Malik Neighbors. So they got a real star, a real talent there in Malik Neighbors. And like I said, that's going to be the consolation prize because it doesn't look like the Giants are going to get that number 1, maybe number 2 overall pick and have that opportunity to draft a quarterback. I think it's going to come down to maybe trading up, or you're hoping that Cleveland or Tennessee win a fluke game next week and some guys are sitting and they figure out a way to win in the end. So I think that's going to be the storyline for the Giants, but they get a win. And I mean, it's the first home win of the season. They finally give their home crowd something to cheer about, but not cheer about too much. As like I said, they lose out on the number 1 pick most likely. as we head into week 18 and just 1 week to go. And just typical for Giants fans to have to go through this once again after they missed out a couple years ago on a quarterback as well. So really, really sad to be a Giants fan right now, but that's just what it is. They win 45-33 over the Indianapolis Colts on Sunday and move to 3-13 on the season. On the other side of New York, it was not pretty up in Orchard Park as the New York Jets got absolutely trounced by the Buffalo Bills, and the scoreline was a little bit nicer to the Jets than this game actually went. It was really just all Buffalo throughout. It was 40-0 at some point, at one point in the fourth quarter. Jets get 2 late touchdowns from Garrett Wilson and Tyler Conklin as Tyrod Taylor was in the game. It wasn't even Aaron Rodgers. And Rodgers had a long, long day. One of the worst days, I think you could say, in his career. 12 of 18, 112 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks. I mean, it was just all Buffalo in this one. And they moved to 13-3 on the year. Jets fall to 4-12. What a year it's been as the Jets continue to find ways to lose and continue to find ways to make this season worse than it actually is. So in the end, the Jets obviously looking for maybe a draft pick now. They're sitting at number 7, and based on some losses and strength of schedule, Jacksonville as well as Carolina, both at 4-12, but have the advantage in the draft-wise. Jacksonville at 5 and Carolina at 6. So the Jets sit at 7, and you're kind of hoping next week when they play Miami at home that it's going to be all about losing and hopefully getting a better draft pick and hoping that one of those teams, Carolina or Jacksonville, ends up winning a game. So when you look at that, I mean, that's just the story of this Jets season, how terrible it's been, and already on to draft season. And obviously week 18, this game really, they're playing 425, but the only reason they're playing 425 on Sunday next week is because of the Miami Dolphins. They're still in playoff contention in the AFC, and Denver just needs to win to close out that last spot. So we'll see what happens there. But I mean, that game is all about Miami, nothing to do with the Jets. They sit at 4-12 and could be 4-13 by the end of next week. And it's just been a long, painful season for the New York Jets, but a little bit of positivity from Tyrod Taylor. Could he be the starter next season? Could the Jets be done with Aaron Rodgers? That's a big storyline right now. And with how he played yesterday, that doesn't help his case for the Jets saying, yeah, all right, come back for another year. I don't know if that's going to completely work for the Jets. And I think it's just going to be Tyrod Taylor probably being the starter next season, and they're going to most likely have to move on from Aaron Rodgers. They moved on from a lot of guys this season, went through the head coach, went through the GM, and it's been a really collapse and a colossal season for the Jets in the end, and a team that was really a playoff contender, Super Bowl contender, some people said, and they sit at 4-12 in week 17 heading into week 18. So it's been a long and painful season for the Jets, but obviously they look towards Miami next week. That one played at MetLife. Tune into that one, and we'll talk about that one more later in the week as they take on the Miami Dolphins. And it's just the Jets continue to find ways to screw up this season, and just one more painful loss to add to it as they lose 40-14 in Buffalo. Shifting things to the hardwood, New York Knicks in action tonight, 7 o'clock. They are in Washington for the second time in 3 days as they take on the 5-24 Washington Wizards, and the Knicks 22-10 on the season. They come into this game 7 o'clock tonight as 11.5-point favorites, total sitting at 230.5. Jalen Brunson coming off that 55-point outing the last time out against Washington a couple days ago. He's a game-time decision tonight, but knowing Jalen Brunson and knowing the Knicks, he most likely will play in this one. We'll see. As Jordan Poole on the other side, a game-time decision for the Wizards. And this one really, when you look at the other night, I think the storylines going in were, well, the Knicks were on a back-to-back. They had a tough game in Orlando, and they beat up on the Magic in the end. But just a late flight. They get in to Washington really early in the morning, and then all of a sudden have to play a back-to-back, and the Wizards gave them a run for their money. Credit to the Wizards who put up points in that one, a 136-132 overtime win in Washington a couple days ago on Saturday night for the New York Knicks. And in that game, it was all about Jalen Brunson, 55 points in the end, and that carried the Knicks to a win. But now this 7-game win streak, you're really thinking about these different games and these different scenarios where, well, if the Knicks do come in on a back-to-back, are they still going to be able to beat up on some of those worser teams in the NBA? I mean, a lot of those teams have kind of given the Knicks a bit of trouble. I mean, you're looking at some of those losses that the Knicks have had recently, and we're talking about the Knicks on a 7-game win streak right now, but the 2 losses before that were Atlanta, Detroit. I mean, they dropped games to Utah. They dropped a game to Chicago. I think those games you're really looking at and saying, well, those are games probably the Knicks should win, but different scenarios and how the Knicks are playing that day obviously really makes the outcome in the end for the Knicks. So when you look at this game tonight, it should be a breeze for the Knicks. 11.5-point favorites. Like I said, Poole's a game time decision for Washington, but you just never know with this New York Knicks team as they continue to kind of not be able to figure things out on defense in some of those games, and they still have some room for improvement. However, it's December 30th. They're not even into the new year yet, and they are sitting at 22-10. How could you be mad about that as a Knicks fan? I mean, they've given you really everything you could have wanted so far this season. They're just behind a couple teams in Boston as well as Cleveland who've been red hot so far this season. Other than that, though, I mean, the Knicks have been really, really strong. It's been everything you could have asked for, like I said, as a Knicks fan. So take the positives out of it. They keep winning games, whether they're close or not. But I'm just looking towards those other games where maybe they're not beating up on those teams like a Washington or a Utah, who are their next 2 games, Monday and Wednesday. And then you have to face off against teams like Oklahoma City twice, and then you face Milwaukee as well. Are they going to be able to really be up for those games and win those games against those tough teams? That's what it comes down to. So I'm not taking too much into account of this 7-game win streak. Yes, Minnesota's a good win. Orlando a couple times is a good win. But those other teams, the New Orleans Pelicans, the Toronto Raptors, the Orlando Magic twice without Paolo Banchero as well as Franz Wagner, and of course the Washington Wizards, those are games that you should win. And obviously, based on the Knicks' expectations, those are easy wins, so to speak, for the Knicks. So I think you look towards those bigger games and say, all right, well, how is it really going to turn out if the Knicks are playing these close games against those lesser teams? And does it make you a little bit worried as a Knicks fan when it comes playoff time later in the season, down the stretch when they need a win? But they're playing really strong right now. Brunson's been fantastic. Bridges has been fantastic. And of course, the addition of Karl Anthony Towns is no understatement there. He's been absolutely tremendous, and what an acquisition that was for the Knicks in the offseason. So they're looking at tonight, 7 o'clock, 11.5-point favorites traveling to Washington. Second time in 3 days that they face off against the Wizards. Tune into that one, 7 o'clock tonight. In Brooklyn, though, it has not been a great month for the Brooklyn Nets. 3-10 record since November 29th and 3-9 in the month of December. It's not been kind to them. Injuries have not been kind, and they just continue to struggle. But they did make some noise yesterday. Wasn't with a victory. They lost 102-101 last night against Orlando and moved to 12-20 and fall to 12-20 on the year. But they did make noise with a trade as D'Angelo Russell is coming back to Brooklyn in a 4-player deal. The Los Angeles Lakers send D'Angelo Russell as well as Maxwell Lewis along with 3 second-round picks to the Brooklyn Nets, and the Nets give up Dorian Finney-Smith as well as Shake Milton. In the end, this trade looks like the Lakers get the better end here, and they get a versatile 3-and-D player in Dorian Finney-Smith, who's been tremendous so far this season for the Nets, even though the record has not spoken nicely about the Nets season. In the end, Dorian Finney-Smith, a great addition down low for the Lakers, a player who can play really any kind of defense against a guard, against a forward, as well as against the center. He could play anywhere you want, and he's been really strong so far this season for Brooklyn. I think when you look at the Lakers getting Finney-Smith, they add another guy down low. You're adding him to guys down low like Anthony Davis, of course, as well as Rui Hachimura down there. Some more additions down low and really just giving the Lakers some room for improvement there. And that's a good deal for them. They end up giving D'Angelo Russell to the Nets, who his contract expiring at the end of the season. Obviously, all the storylines last year were, oh, who's going to sign D'Angelo Russell? What's he going to do? Where's he going to end up? And is he going to get a good deal? He had a very poor postseason, was not good down the stretch, and didn't get anything, and ended up accepting a player option with the Lakers. So a guy who really wasn't expected to completely be on the roster for the Lakers this season ends up on the roster, was benched and went to the bench after just 4 games. And then obviously all the storylines of him and JJ Redick and just all the noise. And they finally ship him out of town. So he goes to Brooklyn. His contract's expiring. I don't expect him to stay with Brooklyn. Just ends up going back there as like I said, the Lakers get a 3-and-D guy in Dorian Finney-Smith. Also get another guard in Shake Milton. So this one, an interesting deal for the Nets. They continue to rack up on second-round picks, it seems. And then next year, they're also going to have plenty of first-rounders. So a long way to go for this Nets rebuild that they're going through. But this is kind of a start, and they end up getting a good deal for Dorian Finney-Smith as they add D'Angelo Russell, and he'll most likely now be the star player for the Brooklyn Nets, along with guys like Cam Thomas, Dennis Schroeder, all still there. And a lot of those guys injured, waiting to come back. And D'Angelo Russell, in the meantime, will be there for the Brooklyn Nets. So an interesting deal. They end up getting Russell back after he was on the Nets just a couple of years ago, 2017, 2018, as well as 2018, 2019. And he had an all-star season in one of those years. So his only all-star season of his career. So maybe some optimism there. Give the Nets a little bit of juice, but I think this is really all focused on a rebuild for the Nets and stacking up on picks and young players in the end. So an interesting one, but Dorian Finney-Smith out the door as he's headed to Los Angeles, and the Nets get D'Angelo Russell back in the deal. But let's finish things off today with a Monday Night Football preview. It's the 13-2 Detroit Lions traveling to San Francisco at 8:15 tonight to take on the 6-9 San Francisco 49ers. And the Lions come into this game as 3.5-point favorites, total sitting at 50.5. And I think the story of this game is, well, the Lions need to win, got to keep up with Minnesota, and it sets up a absolutely great showdown between the Lions and the Vikings next week if the Lions win this one. I think when you look at that game next week, prime time, it's going to be the Sunday Night Football game, and those two teams are going to go at it. But this one's on the road. The game against the Vikings is at home, so they're looking to really go back to home field with momentum and keep that momentum going with what's been a absolutely tremendous season so far for Detroit. Obviously, the loss a couple of weeks ago from the Buffalo Bills at the hands of the Buffalo Bills, 48-42. But then they bounced back with that 34-17 win in Chicago. And now they play Monday night in San Fran against a Niners team that you want to talk about sputtering out of control. The Niners have not been great so far this season. And obviously in the last 6 games, only winning one of them. And that game was against the Chicago Bears at home. I mean, it's been just a rough stretch for the San Francisco 49ers. And this season, long over for them after all the injuries that they dealt with this year. So for that reason, I got to pick the Lions. I mean, how can you not pick the Lions? I will say this spread is a little bit too short for my liking. 3.5 is kind of that iffy number where you're saying, all right, well, what if it's just a 3-point game and the Lions win on a game-winning field goal? I'm thinking the Lions just blow the doors off the Niners here. I think this game's not even going to be close, and that's probably chalk here. In the end, most people would say that the Lions most likely going to really take the Niners to school here. However, it is in San Fran, so maybe a little bit of hope for the Niners to maybe play a bit of spoiler here and finish off this season strong, this disappointing season strong. And it sure has been disappointing for a team that was in the Super Bowl a season ago. But I'm going to pick the Lions. 3.5 the spread sits at. How could you not with how the Lions are playing, and a team that's 7-0 on the road this season, looking to make that 8-0. Total sitting at 50.5. I'm going to pick the over. I like both these offenses. The Lions have the injuries, of course, on defense this season. Niners haven't been great when it comes to putting up points, this season. But in the end, I think both these offenses really step up. And I think when you look at the offense of the Niners versus the injured Lions defense, there will be points there in my mind. So I'll take the over at 50.5. This one should be a interesting game, though. They're looking to, like I said, head into that game against Minnesota. The Lions are with some momentum, and obviously that's a huge, huge game at the end of the season to decide who's going to be the 1 seed and who's going to be the 5 seed in the NFC playoffs. So a really, really big game there and a really big game here to make sure that the Lions control things and get the job done. And obviously a revenge match a little bit for the Lions after last year's NFC Championship game, which the Niners ended up coming back and winning this 17-point lead and all that. So a lot at stake here. Revenge on the line for the Detroit Lions as they travel to San Francisco tonight for Monday Night Football, 8:15 start, and the Lions at 3.5-point favorites. So tune into that one later. But that'll do it for episode 36 of the MudWatch Sports Podcast. Please subscribe below. I've been Zach Malamud. Thanks for watching. Have a happy new year, and talk to you all on Friday.